My brother called me a failure every chance he got. For 3 years, my family agreed with him. Last Monday, all three of them walked into my office without a single phone call ahead of time. My brother sat down, slid a folder across my desk, and told me to sign over 40% of my company before the end of the week. I looked at the folder, then I looked at him, and I smiled. What happened next is something none of them will ever forget. My name is Maya Carter. I am 29 years old and I own a direct-to-consumer skincare brand called Lumive, based in Austin, Texas. We have 41 full-time employees, partnerships with 3 national retail chains, and last year we crossed $8 million in annual revenue. I built every part of it myself, starting from a kitchen table, a $500 savings account, and an idea that everyone in my family told me was a waste of time. I need you to understand who I was before any of this happened, because the story does not make sense without that part. Growing up, my older brother Ryan was the one our parents pointed to whenever they wanted to explain what success looked like. He was charming and confident and very good at making people believe he had everything figured out. He got into a good university on a partial scholarship. Our parents paid the rest without a second thought. After that, they paid for his MBA at a school in Boston. They told everyone at church about it. They put a bumper sticker on my father's truck. I was 2 years younger, and I had always been the quieter one. I liked chemistry, I liked research. I spent most of high school reading about cosmetic formulation and skin biology just because it fascinated me. When I was 17, I mixed my first face serum in our bathroom using ingredients I ordered online. My mother thought it was a phase. My father told me to focus on something practical. When I was 19 and finishing my second year of college, I decided to leave. Not because I was struggling academically. I left because I had already spent 14 months developing a product line, testing formulas, building a small online following, and talking to a manufacturer in Ohio who was willing to work with small batch orders. I had real traction. I had real momentum. I had a decision to make, and I made it. The conversation with my parents that night was one of the worst of my life. My mother cried. My father did not cry. He just looked at me with this flat, quiet disappointment that was somehow worse than anything he could have said out loud. Ryan was home that weekend, visiting from Boston, and he sat on the couch the entire time with his arms crossed, shaking his head slowly like I was embarrassing the whole family just by existing. "You are making the biggest mistake of your life," my father said. My mother reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "Maya, please, just finish your degree. You can do your little project on the side." "It is not a little project," I said. "I have a manufacturer. I have pre-orders." "I have." Ryan cut me off. "You have a hobby," he said. "Nobody is going to buy face cream from a college dropout." I moved into a studio apartment the following month. I worked part-time at a coffee shop 6 days a week for almost a year while I poured everything else into Lumive. There were nights I ate rice and frozen vegetables for dinner 3 times in a row because I had spent my last $40 on packaging samples. There were mornings I woke up at 4:30 to answer customer emails before my shift started at 6. My family was not there for any of it. My mother called occasionally at first. The calls got shorter and further apart. My father stopped calling entirely after I missed Thanksgiving one year because I had a vendor meeting I could not reschedule. Ryan texted me exactly twice in 2 years, both times to forward me job listings at companies where he had connections, as if the solution to my life was simply to stop doing what I was doing and go work for someone else. The last real conversation I had with Ryan before everything fell apart was at my cousin's wedding rehearsal dinner about 3 years ago. He had just finished his MBA and taken a director-level role at a supply chain consulting firm in Dallas. He was loud about it all evening, the salary, the firm's reputation, the clients they worked with. At some point after dinner, he found me near the bar and leaned in close. "You know," he said, keeping his voice low and pleasant, like he was doing me a favor, "you should really think about an exit strategy for that little brand of yours. You have been grinding for years, and you are still small. At some point you have to ask yourself if the juice is worth the squeeze." I looked at him. I said, "We did $2.4 million in revenue last year." He smiled like I had said something cute. That is not real money, Maya. That is just enough to keep you busy. I set my glass down and walked away. We did not speak again after that night. A few weeks later, my mother called to tell me that my father had been diagnosed with a minor cardiac issue, nothing immediately serious, but that the family would appreciate it if I spent less time focusing on my career and more time being present. I told her I would come visit that weekend. She said, "That is not really what I meant." What she meant, I understood, was that they wanted me to slow down, show up to things, stop prioritizing a business they had never believed in. I did not slow down. About 18 months after that phone call, something shifted inside me that I did not fully understand until much later. Ryan's consulting firm had apparently gone through a significant restructuring. His division was eliminated. He landed at a smaller advisory boutique, but from what I could tell through mutual acquaintances, it was not going well. He had built his entire identity around being the successful one, and the scaffolding holding that identity up was quietly starting to buckle. I did not know what was coming. I had no reason to suspect anything. I was focused entirely on Lumive, on a new product launch, on a deal we were close to finalizing with a regional retail chain. Life was moving forward, and I was grateful for it every single day. Then came that Monday morning. I was in my office reviewing copy for an upcoming campaign when my assistant Priya knocked and stepped halfway through the door with a look on her face I had never seen before. It was the expression of someone who is trying very hard to be professional while being completely thrown off by something. "Maya," she said carefully. "There are 3 people in the lobby who say they are your family." I put my pen down. "My family," I repeated. She nodded. "Your parents and your brother. They said they do not have an appointment, but that you will want to see them." For a moment, I sat completely still. Then I said, "Put them in the small conference room. Give them water. Tell them I will be there in 10 minutes. Priya left. I sat at my desk for 2 of those 10 minutes doing nothing but breathing. Then I stood up, straightened my jacket, and walked down the hall. When I pushed open the conference room door, all 3 of them turned to look at me. My mother was sitting with her hands folded on the table, very composed. My father sat beside her, looking older than I remembered, a little tired around the eyes. Ryan was at the far end of the table. He had a leather portfolio in front of him, and he was leaning back in his chair with the particular ease of someone who has decided in advance that the conversation is already going his way. My mother spoke first. "You look well," she said. 3 years, I said. Not a phone call. My father cleared his throat. "Maya." I held up one hand. "I am not doing this right now. Tell me why you are here." Ryan opened his portfolio. "That is actually a very efficient way to start," he said. He slid a document folder across the table toward me. I did not touch it. "What is that?" I said. He smiled. "A proposal. An opportunity, honestly, when you look at it the right way. I am launching an independent brand consultancy. High-end clients, premium positioning, real growth potential. What I need is an anchor partnership with an established brand that has strong consumer trust and good retail relationships." I waited. "Lumive," he said, "would be the perfect fit. The proposal outlines a 40% equity stake transferred to my consultancy in exchange for strategic advisory services and access to my network." I looked at the folder. Then I looked at him. "You came here without calling," I said, slowly, "to ask me to hand you 40% of my company." He tilted his head. "Not ask, exactly." My mother reached forward and pushed the folder an inch closer to me. "Maya," she said, "your brother has been through a difficult period. His firm downsized and he has been rebuilding. This arrangement would benefit both of you." I turned to her. "How exactly does giving away 40% of what I built benefit me?" My father leaned forward. "Because family supports each other," he said. "That is how it works. That is how it has always worked." "You did not support me," I said. "For 3 years, I did not hear from any of you." Ryan's expression flickered for just a second. Something moved behind his eyes and then disappeared. "We are here now," he said. "That should count for something." I looked at all three of them sitting there in the conference room that I had leased, at the table I had chosen, in the building where 41 people came to work every morning because of decisions I had made. I felt something that was not quite anger and not quite sadness. It was closer to clarity. "This is not something I can decide in a private conversation," I said. My father frowned. "What do you mean?" "A decision like this involves my leadership team," I said. "My investors would need to be informed. My legal team would need to review any proposed agreement. If this is a real business proposal, it gets treated like one." Ryan's smile came back, smoother this time. "Fine," he said. "That is actually smart. A formal presentation makes it more legitimate." My mother visibly relaxed. "That is a good idea," she said. "It shows everyone the partnership has real backing." I nodded once. "I have a company-wide strategy meeting scheduled for Thursday evening," I said. "I will add this to the agenda. You are welcome to present the proposal then." Ryan picked up the folder and tucked it back into his portfolio with the air of someone collecting their winnings. He stood and buttoned his jacket. "See," he said, looking at our parents. I knew she would come around. Maya has always been practical when it matters. I walked them to the elevator. Before the doors closed, Ryan looked at me with an expression I recognized from childhood, that older brother certainty that he was the smartest person in any room. "You are making the right call," he said. I smiled and said nothing. What Ryan did not know, what none of them knew, was that I had not agreed to anything. I had simply bought myself 72 hours. And I already knew exactly how I was going to use them. Here's something I have never told anyone outside of my closest circle. About 4 months before that Monday, one of my longest-standing retail buyers reached out to ask why we had suddenly changed our terms on a particular product category. I told her we had not changed any terms. She forwarded me an email that someone had sent from an address designed to look like mine, one letter off in the domain, offering revised pricing and adjusted exclusivity windows that would have been damaging to our relationship. I did not panic, but I started paying attention. Over the following weeks, I noticed small things. A distributor contact who had gone quiet after years of reliable communication. A competitor brand that launched a product remarkably similar to one we had been developing internally and had discussed in early-stage meetings. A potential retail partner who told me they had heard some concerns about our supply chain reliability, concerns that were completely fabricated from a source they would not name. Someone was working against Lumive quietly and methodically. Someone who knew enough about our business to do real damage. I hired a forensic analyst named David who specialized in corporate intelligence, and I asked him to find out who it was. He found out 6 weeks later. The answer was Ryan. Across multiple months, Ryan had been making contact with people in my professional network, presenting himself as a consultant with insight into Lumive's operations. He had been selectively sharing internal information, some of it things he could only have known from our parents, who I had occasionally updated during rare check-in calls, not realizing the information was being passed along. He had approached at least 2 of my retail partners with competing brand pitches. He had sent that spoofed email. He had been quietly and deliberately trying to weaken my position so that when he arrived with his proposal, I would be desperate enough to accept it. David gave me a full report with documentation, email records, contact logs, and signed statements from 2 of the industry contacts Ryan had approached. I sat with that information for several weeks. I thought about what to do with it. I thought about whether to call my parents. I thought about whether to involve lawyers immediately. In the end, I made a different decision. I decided to let Ryan walk into my building and hand me his proposal. And then I decided to let him stand in front of everyone I worked with and learn what the word consequences actually means. Thursday evening, our main conference room was full. My leadership team was seated down one side of the table. My 2 primary investors joined by video call on the large screen at the end of the room. Our legal counsel, a sharp woman named Sandra, who had been with us for 2 years, sat nearest the door. Several department leads filled the remaining seats. And at the far end of the table, my parents and Ryan. My father was dressed carefully. My mother had her best earrings on. Ryan had his leather portfolio and a confident smile and the posture of someone who had rehearsed this moment in the mirror. He genuinely believed he was about to walk out of this room as a 40% owner of my company. I stood at the head of the table. "Thank you all for being here," I said. "Tonight's meeting is to address an external partnership proposal that was brought to me earlier this week. I have asked the proposing party to present their terms directly, and I want this team's full transparency in evaluating it." Ryan looked pleased. He appreciated the word transparency. He opened his portfolio and distributed copies of his proposal around the table. He stood up and spoke for about 8 minutes, confidently and fluently, about market synergies and brand elevation and the value of his network in the premium consulting space. He used the word leverage 4 times. He did not once mention that he was my brother. When he finished, there was a polite silence. My mother looked at me with an expression I can only describe as expectant. My father had his hands folded on the table. "Thank you," I said to Ryan. "I do want to be transparent, as I mentioned." He smiled. "Of course." I turned to Sandra. "Sandra, could you bring in David, please?" The door opened and David walked in carrying a laptop and a bound report. He set both on the table without any drama and sat down in the open chair I had saved. Ryan's smile did not disappear immediately. It took about 4 seconds. "This is David Reyes," I said. "He is a corporate forensic analyst. Over the past several months, Lumive experienced a series of incidents that appeared designed to damage our client relationships and competitive position. I retained David to identify the source." He did. My mother looked confused. "What incidents?" David opened the report and connected his laptop to the room's display. The first slide showed a timeline of the incidents: the spoofed email, the competitor product launch, the retail partner contacts, the fabricated supply chain rumors. Each entry had a date, a description, and a corresponding piece of documentation. The second slide showed Ryan's name at the center of a contact web. One of my investors leaned forward on the video call screen. "What are we looking at exactly?" David spoke calmly. "Between approximately 7 and 4 months ago, the individual who submitted tonight's proposal made contact with at least 3 of Lumive's established retail partners, 2 industry distribution contacts, and 1 potential new partner. In each case, he represented himself as an independent consultant with knowledge of Lumive's internal operations. In 2 cases, he made competitive pitches on behalf of a brand he was advising. In 1 case, he provided inaccurate information about Lumive's supply chain to a prospective retail partner." He advanced to the next slide. Additionally, an email impersonating Lumive's founder was sent to a long-term buyer using a spoofed domain. The email attempted to renegotiate existing terms in ways that would have been commercially damaging. We traced the origin of that email to an IP address associated with the individual's home network in Dallas. The room was completely still. Ryan stood up. "This is absurd," he said. His voice was controlled, but there was something underneath it, a tightness. "This is a fishing expedition. You do not have." Sandra slid a document across the table. "We have signed statements from 2 of the retail contacts," she said. "We have the email header analysis, the IP trace, and phone records showing calls between you and each of the parties named in the report. We also have a statement from your former colleague at the advisory boutique confirming you discussed Lumive as a target acquisition specifically because, and I am quoting here, your sister would not be able to survive the pressure if things got bad enough." My mother made a sound that was not quite a word. My father had gone pale. He was looking at Ryan with an expression I had never seen on his face before. It was the expression of someone realizing that the story they have been telling themselves for years does not match the one that is actually true. Ryan looked at me. "You set this whole thing up," he said. I looked back at him. "You started it 4 months ago," I said. "I just finished it." He closed his portfolio. His hands were not entirely steady. My mother turned to him. "Ryan." Her voice was very quiet. "Is this true?" He did not answer her. I kept my voice calm and even. "The proposal is rejected," I said. "Sandra is going to walk you through a cease and desist agreement before you leave tonight. It covers any further contact with Lumive's partners, clients, or employees. It also covers any future disclosure of proprietary information. If you sign it, we handle this privately. If you do not sign it, we file tomorrow morning. One of my investors cleared his throat on the video call. Maya, he said. I have to say, this was handled with remarkable professionalism. Ryan pushed his chair back and stood very still for a moment. He looked at me and I think he was waiting for something, maybe for me to look away, maybe for some sign that this was negotiable, that there was still a version of this conversation where he came out ahead. There was not. He picked up his portfolio and walked to where Sandra was sitting. He sat down next to her without another word. My parents did not leave with him. After Sandra had finished with Ryan and he had gone, they sat at the now mostly empty conference table while my team quietly filtered out. I sat down across from them. My father spoke first. He said, Maya, I owe you an apology. He said it simply, without decoration, the way my father said things when he actually meant them. I was wrong about your work. I was wrong to listen to your brother the way I did. I was wrong not to call. My mother had been crying quietly. She had taken her earrings off at some point, and they were sitting on the table in front of her. I should have trusted you, she said. You were always the one who showed up. We just could not see it. I sat with that for a moment. I did not rush to make them feel better, and I did not twist the knife either. I just sat with it because it was real and it deserved to be felt by all of us. You can call me, I said finally. That door is not closed. But I need you to understand something. What Ryan did to this company was not just a family disagreement. He deliberately tried to take apart something I spent years building because he thought I was weak enough that he could get away with it. He was wrong. And I need you to understand that the version of me you spent years doubting is the same one who just protected 41 people's jobs tonight. My father nodded. He did not say anything, but he nodded in a way that told me he had heard every word. When they left that night, I stood in the empty conference room for a long time. The table still had water glasses on it, and the printed copies of Ryan's proposal were stacked in the corner waiting to be recycled. I looked at all of it, and I thought about the kitchen table where I had started. The 4:30 mornings, the frozen vegetables. The year I worked at the coffee shop and believed anyway, even when no one around me did. The thing about being underestimated by the people who are supposed to know you best is that it teaches you something very specific. It teaches you not to wait for their permission to be who you already are. I had already been building Lumive for years before anyone in my family noticed. I did not need them to start. I did not need their approval to keep going. I needed it only for the parts of myself that still remembered being 19 years old in that living room, watching my father look at me with quiet disappointment. I understood that night that even those parts of me had healed. Not because my parents apologized, though they did, not because Ryan was finally exposed, though he was. They healed because I had stood in a room full of people who had watched me build something real, and I had handled the hardest moment with steadiness and preparation instead of fear. That is the thing no one tells you about being a founder. The product is not the hardest part. The market is not the hardest part. The hardest part is deciding, over and over again, that what you know to be true about yourself matters more than what anyone else has chosen to believe. I picked up the last copy of Ryan's proposal from the stack in the corner. 40% of Lumive. I looked at it for one more second, and then I put it in the recycling bin and turned off the lights. Lumive is mine. Every percentage point of it. I earned it on the mornings when no one was watching, and I kept it on the night when everyone was. Some people need the approval of others to move forward. I used to be one of them. I am not anymore. And that, more than the revenue or the retail partnerships or any number in any report, is the thing I am most proud of. If you are out there right now building something that the people closest to you cannot see yet, I want you to know something. Keep going. Not because they will eventually come around, though sometimes they do. Keep going because the version of you on the other side of that effort is someone worth becoming. And when they finally walk into your conference room expecting to find someone they can take advantage of, they are going to find something very different instead. They are going to find everything you built while they were not paying attention. They are going to find out exactly who you are. Make sure it is someone you are proud of.